Okay, thank you, Dr. Vidya. Thank you for having me at this wonderful conference and webinar of yours. I'm so happy. I'm so honored. Is it okay that I speak in English?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great. So my name is Dr.Nadzri Mokhtar. I'm the owner of Nara Clinic and Apollo Men's Wellness Center here in Malaysia, in Bangsa and Star Hill. And I was happy to have Dr. Vidya over the other day to Apollo Men's Wellness, and she tried my oxygen bath. So this is a new treatment that has come into Malaysia and the region that we've brought in, and it's giving a lot of benefits to a lot of patients. So I would like to share it with you today, with your permission. So a little bit about my background. I'm a board certified anti-aging medicine and functional and integrative doctor with FIIM, ABARM, and BOIM. And I'm also the founder of Nara Clinic, Nara O2, and Apollo Men's Wellness. And I've been in the medical line for the past 25 years. My passion is wellness and aesthetics. This is a little bit of the bath area that Dr. Vidya had experienced. Can you all see the video? This is what it looks like. So what I am promoting is this immersion therapy in liquid form of oxygen. Basically, mandian ya, hanya mandian di dalam bath yang sangat tinggi kandungan oksigennya, yang mampu reverse hypoxia, iaitu condition di mana oksigen sangat rendah, is called hypoxia. So it's able to reverse hypoxia, and when you reverse hypoxia, you increase your mitochondrial energy, so you help repair this mitochondriopathy, and you improve the membrane potential of the cells. Therefore, you increase the energetics of the cell, and you increase the ATP production in the cell. ATP is a unit of energy called adenosine triphosphate. So when you're in a well-oxygenated environment, one molecule of glucose can produce 36 units of ATP. But if you're in a hypoxic environment, which is lack of oxygen, one molecule of glucose can only produce 2 units of ATP because it's undergoing what we call anaerobic respiration, anaerobic without oxygenation. So it also helps to reduce inflammation, and it increases antioxidant protection, and it enhances your immune system. And all these have been clinically proven, yeah? And they did clinical trials on this. So how did this story begin? How did my journey begin? And when did this technology started? So it started way back 20 years ago in Hungary, Budapest, by a man of the name Dr. Robert Lyons. So this is the man, Dr. Robert Lyons, on my left there. So how did I discover about this? It was through my patient. So one of my patients, his father had colon cancer stage 4, and he was living in UK at that time. So his son, which is my patient, he's here in Malaysia. He told me, hey, my father wants to go to Hungary to do a treatment with Dr. Robert Lyons. So he told me to call this Dr. Robert and find out what is this treatment all about. So I asked the Dr. Robert, I called him and I asked, what is this treatment? He said, it's just bathing with this oxygen-rich water and drinking with the oxygen-rich water. And there is something called a suppository as well. So I said, okay, the father is insisting he wants to do this treatment. He doesn't want to do any conventional treatment because he is a Church of Scientologists. They don't believe in all this surgery, radiation, chemo. So he's adamant to do this treatment. So I said, okay, let's try it. Let's give it a go and see how it goes. And within 3 to 4 months after the treatment, he did the bathing every day, 3 times a day for 14 days, and then 10 days off, then 14 days again, then 10 days off, 14 days again. Within 3-4 months, when he came back to UK and he did his checkup, colonoscopy, CT scan, MRI, all the colon cancer was gone. Nothing was there. They did a colonoscopy, they did the CT scan, they did his blood works. It was gone. It was a huge tumor which has invaded the colon wall and gone into the surrounding structure, but now it's all gone. So we were amazed. and I wanted to know more about this. So I met up with Dr. Robert because he happened to go to Singapore in 2018. I said, Robert, I'd like to meet you. I would like to know more about this treatment. So it so happened that that time they have signed an agreement with Singapore to open some centers. But this was the previous generation baths, yeah? So they've improved on that technology. So this was the previous generation. So they had 2 centers in Singapore, which opened in 2018. And I went there. I used to go there every 3 weeks. I used to bathe in that center. I used to send my patients to that center. So my patients would get some improvement. There was one patient with breast cancer, which also reduced in size by 50% in just 1 month. There was another patient with a lung tumor. He remained like really stable for a long time. And I've sent many other patients for just wellness purposes. It's just as good to keep yourself healthy. Prevention, right, is better than cure. And I used to also travel to Budapest and send my patients to Budapest. And I would go and meet him in conferences like in London. And we would organize conferences in Malaysia ourselves. We'll be part of FIIM and so on and so forth, right? All this was fine. And so a little bit about some of the patients that I interviewed. There were some amazing cases. I met one lady from France. Her name was Nadine, with breast cancer stage 4, and it has invaded into her bones. There was metastasis to the bones. So she started bathing in Hungary many years ago. And she said immediately she felt some improvement. So from 1 day, she said, let's extend it to 3 days. From 3 days, she extended it to 1 week. From 1 week became 2 weeks. And then she said, let's do it for a month. And after a month, she said, let's do it for 6 months. And finally, she moved from France to Hungary, Budapest, and did the treatment for nearly 6 months. And all her bone mets was gone. Her cancer was gone. And I saw her when she was visiting Budapest. This was three or 4 years later, still completely healthy. Even the man with the colon cancer, I still see him around and he's still completely healthy 6-7 years ago. So after all that happened, COVID struck in 2020. And unfortunately, when COVID struck, all the centers were closed. I could not send my patients over. So what happened? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So during that time, Robert managed to miniaturize the technology that made this oxygen bath. So he managed to miniaturize it and confine it into a structure just under the tub. So under the tub, you will find all the processes being happening, and it helped to increase the oxygen partial pressure. I will show you the photo of the tub later. So in that sense, I said, oh, now it's easier for us to bring the machine in. So I brought the first machine in, or the first bath in, to Malaysia in 2021. And then since then, I've opened more and more wellness centers. And I've also shared this technology with other operators, other doctors, or other wellness centers. And now there's around 17 baths or 18 baths around the region. In Bangkok, in Singapore, and in Sarawak, and also in Jakarta. Okay? In Sarawak, there's one that opened early this year, and they have 6 units of baths there. And it was launched by the Chief Minister of Sarawak himself, Abang Jo, in Kuching. That's the Damai Wellness Spa Resort. So if anyone who wants to go and have a nice holiday resort, at the same time have a wellness treatment, you can go to Kuching. So I want to explain to you a little bit about what is so miraculous about water and oxygen. And it never dawned on me. It took me many years to still figure it out. And I'm still like learning. So please forgive me, because we are all still learning. And knowledge keeps on growing. And you'll find out new things as you go along. It's never finite. It's infinite. Before we used to think that water exists in only 3 phases: the liquid, the gas, and the ice. But now we're starting to learn that water has a 4th phase. We used to think of only in just 3 dimensions, but now with quantum physics, we're learning about the 4th dimension, and so on and so forth. And it's amazing because right now, the new knowledge keeps on appearing, right? And we are moving towards more energy-based medicine. And like Ibu Arwan also mentioned, a lot of these things are going into energetics. So let me explain a little bit about the water. Few minutes. Water, as we know it, we only thought of water as H2O molecule, as if a molecule is like separate from each other, floating around in the water in just a single molecule of H2O. But in reality, it's not. It can be linked. So look at this molecule of H2O. It is linked to another molecule of H2O by way of a hydrogen bond. And when they are linked like this, they can form shapes. They can form shapes, and then look at this tetrahedron shape. See, there is a molecule at the top, 3 molecules at the bottom, 1 molecule in between. It is shaped like a pyramid, almost, right? And when they are linked to another, they become like a hexagonal structure, and they become cluster. And these clusters are also linked, and they become a supercluster. And when they become a supercluster like that, they can hold a lot of oxygen in, number one. But number two is they also hold a lot of memory and information. Water actually can carry information and memory. Just like the energetics lecture before me, Ibu Arwan mentioned, cells can contain memory. The water in the cells is probably the medium that's containing the memory. And it's important that when you drink, when you eat, when you ingest, you have good thoughts. Because if you have bad thoughts, or you have imprinted into yourself bad energy, depression, anger, fear, envy, or grief, all this can magnify when you are in the presence of water, when you keep on ingesting water, and you keep perpetuating that memory inside you. All this will add on to disease. Okay, so water carries memory, and it's important that when you are in the water, in the bath, you also think of good thoughts, so that all that thoughts and energy within that water is magnified as it enters through you. Okay, it enters through your skin, through your aquaporins, and absorbs through your extracellular fluid. So remember that. So look at that. Water can also be linear. So long chain of oxygen forming like O2, O8, O16, O64. And when you measure this water, you can find that the partial pressure of oxygen starts to increase way up to 377 millimeter mercury. That's insane level. You know, a typical tap water, and you measure it with a transducer, it's about 20 millimeter mercury. Carbonated water, 0 millimeter mercury. But when you measure this water, it's 370, and it's so stable. Just take a look at this video. It's a small video I found online, and you can see water having structure. Look at that. That's a water molecule, okay? And it's becoming hexagonal, and then it's becoming like a ball cluster, and the cluster becomes superclusters, and it's holding oxygen inside, and it's also holding memory. So getting water to be structured is very important for you to, when you drink. When you just take water from the tap water, it's not structured, it's not alive, we call it. So that water is considered dead. It doesn't carry good energy with it. It does not carry healing properties or healing benefits. So how do we structure water and make it healthier? Okay, how do we make water living, right? Look, this is Professor Masaru Emoto's experiment, and he produced a few bottles of water, all from the same water source, and he put thoughts and words on the bottle. Each bottle different words and thoughts. Thank you, wisdom, truth, eternal, angel, I love you. And then he put some with bad thoughts. You make me sick, evil, or so. And then he freezes the water, and at the time of the water about to be frozen, he takes a photograph, and you can see the imprint of the water, and you can see the shape of the molecule of water. And look at that. When it's thank you, you have a beautiful snowflake-like shape. Wisdom, also beautiful, like this hexagonal shape. Truth and eternal. But when you give it a bad thought, or like a bad energy, like you fool or you make me sick, look at that. It is ugly. But when you put back a prayer on it, you give a good thought and energy on it, it becomes nice and shape again, beautiful shape again, structured. So we're talking about structure. You need structured water in your system. And our blood, we are 5 liters of blood, and the rest is in our extracellular, it's in extravascular space, and then the rest are in your cells. So we have 60% to 70% of our body is totally water. So imagine how much information is in our body carried by this water. So I want to show you a little bit about what happens inside the water. Look at that. Those are micro species of oxygen bubbling away. So we are not pumping oxygen gas into the water. We are restructuring the water to create the oxygen structures. And you can see when you magnify it further, they are almost like charged particles in long chain. And when you measure the partial pressure, you can see the value as it's going up from 42. As you put the probe into the water, it's going up and up. Now, it also depends on temperature. To get a water to have a high content of oxygen at this temperature is really technologically difficult. At 37, 38 degrees Celsius, we are getting the oxygen temperature, the oxygen partial pressure to 372 millimeter mercury, and it remains stable. As you see the curve, it remains stable. It's very difficult. When it's cold, it's harder to increase the oxygen partial pressure. Up to 600 millimeter mercury point is okay. Okay? So how do I use or utilize this treatment in my cancer approach? So my approach is very integrative. I like to help the patients, and I do it with interactive. I need their feedback, I need their cooperation, I need their belief, right? So we need to also work with them, what they want to do. Sometimes we have our own ideas and our own protocols, but they cannot achieve it. It's no point either. So we also want to work naturally. We don't want to overload the patients and some of these patients, they already have gone through chemo, radio, surgery, so they've undergone through a lot. So you want to come in to kind of rescue them and help them heal in a conducive way. So this way, this oxygen bath is very less barrier to entry. It's comfortable. You can bathe in that water without much adverse events or adverse effects. If you are in a high pressure chamber, for example, there's always the feeling of claustrophobia. And if the partial pressure of the chamber is very high, there's always a chance of some slight injury to your alveolar wall, which is the small alveolar sac. It's very soft and pliable. There could also be a damage to your middle ear, to the eardrums. These are all fragile items. And also you can feel claustrophobia in the tank. So being in an oxygen bath is very relaxing. While you're in there, you're getting therapy and you're getting benefit, but at the same time, you're relaxing your nervous system, you're calming down the SNS overdrive, and you're balancing yourself back. So many patients claim after bathing, they are feeling so good, so calm, their brain and their thoughts are also more well organized, they're not so hyper, and they can fall asleep when they are so insomniac before this, right? So this patient had pancreatic cancer stage 4. So it was already invading into the neck structure, into the small bowels, and she was getting a little bit obstructed. And when she eats, she could throw up. She lost so much weight. She's very jaundiced. And I started her on the oxygen protocol, 14 days on, 10 days off, 14 days on, 10 days off. But she lived in Sabah. So it required a lot of effort on her part to come to Malaysia, stay for 14 days, and do the bath 2 times or 3 times a day. My recommendation was 3 times, but she couldn't even make it for 3 times. Sometimes she only did twice a day. And she also wanted to do the chemo because the oncologist offered her chemo, which is like cisplatin and all that. So she's doing that once every 3 weeks. I said, fine, because we're integrative, we are not, we don't exclude anyone. We try to combine, but we try to minimize any side effect, and we work with the patient not to overburden them financially as well as logistically, because it will only add to the stress. So eventually, you are so stressed out with all these treatments running from one center to another, it's not beneficial to your disease, right? And I added some low-dose cytokines and homeopathics. We can talk about them much later. And I also asked her to drink the water 1.5 liters a day. She managed to do 5 cycles, but within that 5 cycles, not all she could do for 14 days long. And she also could not do 3 times a day, like I said. But within that 5 cycles, in the space of 6 to 7 months, her tumor marker CA 19.9 dropped from 36,807 to 5,445 from March to July. That's 4 months. That's amazing. And she gained weight, okay? She gained energy. Her jaundice resolved. She had no debilitating side effects from the chemo. She had strength. She was not fatigued. She could still work. And she was traveling back and forth to Sabah. She still managed to perform her Umrah. And she went to the driving range, eating with friends, almost had an unimpaired social life and activity. So it's almost like, okay, we have a little talk about it and said, it's like, okay, you might be living with cancer, but not having the side effects of the cancer. It's almost like it maintains you. And it is causing your tumor markers to go down, and there must be some shrinkage because you are no longer jaundiced and you're no longer obstructed. But of course, with everything, you need continuous discipline. So sometimes, maybe financial or whatever, she could not continue. So then the tumor markers went back up. So I'm saying this honestly, right? So with anything, you got to have discipline and motivation to do this until you're completely cured. That's what I believe. Okay. Then another patient of mine, younger patient, around 40 years old, 47, he also was recently diagnosed to have a pancreatic adenoma at the tail. It was a neuroendocrine tumor, sorry. So it was about 4 by 2 centimeter. This was in 22nd of October. But he lived in Singapore. So luckily, Singapore had an oxygen bath recently. And I referred him to have the bath there, and he bathed twice a day. And he would go for 2 weeks straight. So from 19 October, he started. His CA 19.9 was 217 until 25th November. That was like 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks. So he managed to do 2 weeks of oxygen bath, 10 days off, and then 1 more week he was still bathing, 10 days off. And guess what? His CA 19.9 dropped from 217 down to 18. Okay? He was fine, he was looking well, but this boy, mentally, he was kiasu. I mean, he cannot have the thought that there is something there. He wanted it out. I said, give it a chance. If you can stay a bit longer. It might, reduce further. You never know. Because on ultrasound, it was already showing shrinkage, right? But he wanted to take it out. So we, as integrative doctors, again, being supportive, we cannot overrule a patient decision. So he took it out. He had the surgery. But no one told him. I mean, the beauty was, during the histopathology, intraoperatively, they took an hour to find if there was any cancer cell. They were trying to find it so hard, it took an hour. He was left on the table before they closed and stitch him up again. It just shows that after doing it, it helped reduce the occurrence of the tumor. And another important thing is that I did the CTC for him, the one that Dr. Zawawi is going to explain. The CTC was 0, so it would have given him a good prognosis to undergo a more non-invasive approach, because his cancers or tumor cells were still confined within its own structure, is within its own, so it hasn't not invaded, it has not metastasized, it has not left its capsule. So it had more chance. So we can use CTC as a tool to also plan our proposed protocol for the patient. But what I want to stress upon is that when you undergo a conservative management with surgery, radio, chemo, there are, of course, inadvertently consequences. So after the surgery, he had a collection of fluid, and then he had to be warded again because he started having fevers. He started having a side effect from the surgery, not from the tumor, but from the surgery. Oh God. And he had to be shot with ibuprofen. He was like painful. He had to stay in bed for another 3 weeks in the hospital. So we don't think about all that. If we can provide an alternative to patients for their cancer management that is less invasive, I mean, of course, guided, of course, with like CTC, with your good prognosis and your good clinical assessment, at least, patients don't have to undergo the sequelae of conventional therapy, right? Unless they really require. Then I'm not against it at all. Okay, so I don't know how much more time do I have, Dr. Vidya? Dr. Vidya, do I have a bit more time? I can show some more photos and pictures.
Yes, sure. You can, doctor.
Okay,
No
good.
worry, no worry.
All right, okay. So since I have more time, I'm going to show you more photos. This is a photo of me and Intan. Intan has opened an oxygenal wellness spa in Jakarta, whereby you can have the oxygen bath there. Okay, wait, hang on. I'm going to show you some more photos. And these are photos of cases, right? Cases that have undergone the oxygen bath and gotten benefit. So this is a lady, 40-something-year-old lady. She's a banker based in UK, and she had basal cell carcinoma of the forehead, and the size was 5 by 2.5 cm. Now, doctors would only undergo surgery for this and excise it with a white margin and have a huge scar on your forehead. She didn't want that because she was in the front line, she was meeting customers, and she's a banker. So she tried to do an alternative management. So she went to Hungary, Budapest, and stayed there for 10 days and did 30 baths, 3 baths a day, and drank 1.5 liter of the water per day. This is the cocoon water, yeah? In Hungary, it's called cocoon. In Asia, it's called yellow, okay? And she applied the cocoon gel. Look at this. Look at the photos before, after. What has happened to the basilioma? From a dead tumor cell now to kind of like inflamed stage. So she was very happy with this. She said, I'm okay with it. I can just camouflage it, use my makeup, and I can go to work. But Robert said, no, you must treat it until its core, until its source, and revive it. That's what I was telling you about just now, that patient, right? Keep on treatment until you have a complete resolution. If not, these things can always happen again because you have not solved the actual problem. So she came back and she heeded the advice and did another 14 days. And this time, look at her skin. Complete resolution. How do you reverse a dead tissue back to a living tissue? So this is an amazing thing, right? I leave that for you to ponder. Okay, so next. Also another tumor of the cancer of the skin. Look. So it can reverse. You can de-differentiate a dead tissue back to a normal healthy tissue. That requires a lot of epigenetic changes. That requires a lot of the microenvironment changes in the tumor microenvironment that has then forced the cell to behave differently, right? So we are using reversal of hypoxia as a tool to affect the microenvironment of the tumor space and therefore to affect the epigenetic changes in the tumor cells and therefore changing the behavior of the cells. Otherwise, I have no other explanation for this because this is reversal of an existing tumor back to a normal cell, right? to the point where you cannot distinguish where was the disease cell in the first place. Look at this. Right. This is a melanoma, malignant melanoma. Then look at that. Where has all the melanin gone? This is no longer pathogenic, then this is no longer malignant. Now, this is a wound of a finger cut off. Remember, I was telling you about memory, that our cells have memory. So it would have memory of a shape, memory of your original structure, what it was supposed to be. This is April the 3rd. So when she cut the finger, she had some cocoon water. She dipped her hand in the cocoon water twice a day, every day, for 30 days, for half an hour each time. And she applied the wound with the gel, the cocoon gel. Look at that. By 9th of April, from 3rd of April to 9th of April, you can see almost the shape of the thumb revealing itself again. What is this? And by 15th of May, which is a month and a week, a month and a week, so 5 weeks, full regeneration of the thumb. That's amazing, right? So back to the water and memory again. So water will carry the memory, the cells carry the memory, and it will regenerate you to where you are supposed to be. Remember, water is a very powerful tool. And recently, I've been reading a lot about quantum energy and quantum entanglement. You must Google this and find out about quantum entanglement. When you have two particles and they're spaced between them at a distance of light years away, no matter how far they are, but they are entangled somehow through an energetic bond or whatever, anything that happens to this particle will be reflected in this particle. Can you imagine that? This is astounding because you can be separated by space, time, and distance, but anything happening here is reflected here. So I was thinking, what if that was happening in the water itself? Because the water's particles are vibrating at a certain frequency or at a certain molecular structure, yet it reflects from another particle that it's quantumly linked, like an entanglement, but in a very pristine environment, health-giving environment. So while you're dipping in that water, you're absorbing that health environment, and it's changing your structure within you, your energetics within you. So I call this changing of water, because we have water in our cells, we have water in our extracellular fluid. What if we can change that water? What if we can change that information? Can we then change the physiology? Can we then change our biology? I assume this must be happening because that's why the cells are changing. That's why the cells are reverting back to normality from a disease state. So how else can it be explained? Correct? This is a device that measures your ECG, oxygen saturation, and heart rate variability. So before drinking, that patient was red, yellow, red, and his oxygen saturation was only 96%. His heart rate was only 48 beats per minute, and his heart rate variability showed a red indicator. After drinking the cocoon water for about 300 deciliter, and after 5 minutes, he tested again the VV, and it showed that his oxygen saturation has come up to 99%, and his heart rate has improved, and then his heart rate variability also improved. So it's green, yellow, green. Then he drank again and wait another 10 minutes. Now it's all green. Excellent. So cells are able to detect oxygen and they're able to adapt to the presence of oxygen. And this is a Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine, yeah, that they had to discover. And cells have also the membrane potential. Healthy cell membrane potential is minus 70 millivolts. But when you're unhealthy, your membrane potential drops. And the more it drops, the lower your membrane potential, the less healthier your cells are. The more disease your cells are. So you have no energy at all. The cells have no energy. So drinking the water, bathing in the water, there is energy. You saw that in one of the pictures that I showed earlier, it was lighted up. The cells that are being linked, they are lighted up. They have energy. So when you have lack of energy, there's no import-export. Our transporter, the cell membrane transporter, cannot function. It cannot excrete its excrements, and it cannot import its nutrients. How will the cell survive? It will go into a fermentative mode. That's the beginning of anaerobic glycolysis and the production of lactic acid. And the cells are surrounded by lactic acid. That's their tumor shield. So cells are fermenting. Cancer cells are nothing but fermentative cells. When we bring the oxygen, a very high concentration of oxygen, to the surrounding environment, it gushes in. It goes direct in because you cannot prevent it. It's a passive diffusion. It's not active anymore. It's such a high concentration of oxygen, and your cells have a very low concentration of oxygen. It zooms in. It pierces the skin. It gets into the membrane. It gets into the mitochondria, and it recharges it again. So when it's recharged, the cell starts to function again. All the functionality comes back. It can export its excrement, it can import its nutrients, it can start the healing and DNA, and it can correct all the mutations. And therefore, repair and regeneration begins. The behavior of the cells will revert to normality. It's no longer in a state of stress and anxiety. So anxiety very important. Okay. So these are some of the studies done because it's already been 20 years in the market in Hungary. It's undergone through Budapest Faculty of Physical Education and Sport, which show that it increase your psychological and psycho parameters. It can improve your response time. There is no cytotoxicity in this water. It doesn't increase your reactive oxygen species because it's not pro-oxidative. As you're drinking this water or you're bathing in this water, it's just supporting you to the oxygen level to the amount that you need. And if there was some reactive oxygen species, it will be counteracted upon by your own antioxidant because the water somehow increases your own antioxidant protection level. It increases your vitamin C. Now, this is another study that is going to be undertaken to show and prove to you that when you drink the oxygen water, you can start to produce vitamin C. Because prior to this, nobody knew that we can produce vitamin C. But actually we can. And through many, many observations, because Dr. Robert would do your blood test before and after the treatment, he didn't allow you to take any vitamin C at all, no supplementation, no IV drip, and he measured before and after, and he would see your vitamin C levels shoot up through the roof, your HIF-1 alpha level drop, your anti-inflammation, your inflammatory markers drop, and that's the beginning of your cure. That's the beginning of your health and the reversal of the cancer cell. All the cases that you see, all these fermenting cells cases that you see, vitamin C increase, HIF-1 alpha decrease, tumor markers decrease, NK cells increase, the activity of your immune cells increase, and then he starts to see the improvement, the changes. There are some crazy pictures of before and after. Breast cancer that already like fungated, that are already fermentative, ulcerated, can revert back to normal skin after so many months. And the tumors and the metastases in the lungs, in the bones disappear. How? So there are more studies showing beneficial effects for blood glucose, HbA1c, memory for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. See the effects of cocoon water on the speed of cognitive function. It boosted it. So we are not saying this water is just for cancer patients. It's for everyone. It's for anyone who wants wellness. It's for the sports athletes who wants to reduce their lactic acid, wants a better recovery, wants a better performance in their sport. It's for bodybuilders, it's for race car drivers, it's for UFC champions, and they are bathing in their center in Las Vegas. These UFC fighters. This is an ultra marathonist. She improved her time by 2 hours, and this ultra marathon they run for 200 kilometers above. So she was going from Budapest to where was it? Prague or somewhere, and she managed to cut the time by 2 hours just by drinking the oxygen water. And of course, it's anti-aging. That's what I love it for. It keeps your skin supple and smooth. Look at this curve. As you age, your tissue oxygen concentration starts to drop, right? Look at that age. Age of 80, your tissue concentration is only 70. Not pulse oximeter, tissue oxygen concentration. But what if you can increase back your tissue oxygen concentration? You go back up the curve. You reverse age. That's what we want. This is what the water looks like, magnified. No oxygen particle, no oxygen gas being pumped in, yeah? Because if you pump in gas under pressure, it's all going to evaporate into the air. What we are doing is there is a restructure of the water, changing the shape of the water molecules, having them form clusters, increasing the oxygen concentration, and then forcing it goes in passively through your skin because of the partial pressure difference. Okay, Dr. Vidya, it's my time up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Nadzri.
My pleasure.